Now I will start reading the book 10x is easier. No one else has the exact same goals or standards you do. Therefore, measuring yourself against someone else's results or standards is a losing game because you are not ultimately optimizing for the same thing. You are not playing the same game. Your standards are not the same as anyone else's. Your objective is not the same. Your unique ability and calling are not the same. There is no external competition. Therefore, measuring yourself against someone else's results and standards is a sure path to becoming average or good, but never uniquely great, one of a kind, and world class. You can't beat someone else at being them, just like someone else cannot beat you at being you. The scariest and most courageous thing you will ever do is to be yourself. I am still learning this lesson as I often find myself measuring and comparing myself with other authors. Yet, in a recent conversation with my friend and artificial intelligence expert and entrepreneur Howard Getson, I was reminded that my fitness function, what I am optimizing for my unique ability and calling, is radically different than those other authors. What they are going for and what I am going for are totally different, essentially in terms of who we are becoming. Sure, we may use similar matrices like book sales to measure our progress, but if book sales was purely the fitness function of what I was going for, I would most certainly be writing different books. So, number of books sold is not my primary fitness function, though it is certainly part of what I am optimizing for. My fitness function is different from anyone else and highly specific. So is yours. What are you ultimately going for? What are you optimizing for? What level of capability and results do you want to develop and master? What are the standards you want to refine and actualize? Defining your fitness function is as simple as defining the specific standards or criteria you want to grow into, the criteria you feel called to and want to create. The more specific your fitness function, the more specialized, nuanced, and valuable you will become. Your agency as a person is based on what you choose to develop yourself into. We all will become someone. It's your responsibility to define what you want and to direct your focus and attention toward that. Your fitness function is your filter. It filters not only what's important and what's not important, it also filters what you see and what you don't see. Your selective attention, as you clarify the specific 10x transformation you want, the 10x becomes your filter of the world. Over time, as you get more committed to it, you not only become more optimized and specialized for that particular thing, but you also being filtering everything else out. The economic term for this is opportunity cost. The evolutionary or biological term for this is atrophy. You will atrophy and become increasingly unaware in the areas outside your filter. By getting committed to something specific, a chosen fitness function, you become an increasingly specific and unique type of person. You stop seeing, noticing, and paying attention to anything that isn't relevant to your perceptual filter. Whatever you focus on expands. Whatever you focus on, you create more of. Whatever you focus on, you become. Whatever you focus on, you develop a finer, more nuanced, and more specific understanding of. As author Robert Kiyosaki stated, intelligence is the ability to make finer distinctions describes a finer and more nuanced understanding of a particular thing. The more you pay attention to and focus on something, the finer the distinction you develop for that particular thing. Take football, or for example. Someone who is merely a casual fan watching a game is not watching the same game as someone who really understands the game. The person who understands the game will see far more nuance and meaning, finer distinctions within every facet of the game than the casual watcher. They will recognize important subtleties and the casual observer won't notice, such as whether or not the left tackle on one team is the starter or the backup. The implications of even the seemingly smallest details will be gargantuan to the person making finer distinctions. The person with greater understanding sees and understands the situation more systematically, recognizing that even small tweaks to even small individuals parts can create massive and non-linear changes to the overall whole. The scientific term for this level of systematic thinking is the butterfly effect, a concept initially developed by mathematician and meteorologist Edward Norton Lorenz, who used the analogy of the exact time and path of a tornado being influenced by minor vibrations, such as a distant butterfly flapping its wings several weeks earlier. Seeing finer distinction is the difference between high definition and low definition, the difference between mastery and excellence or less. One has far more detail and precision, but also one has unique angles and connections made through study and commitment, whereas the other person only has a surface level perspective. Consider driving. When you first learn, your conscious mind is required to pay extreme attention to each little aspect, such as signaling when changing lanes. But as you drive more and more, you group multiple aspects of driving together in your memory, such that you can unconsciously perform literally hundreds of individual tasks at the same time. The parts have integrated into a new whole. When viewing a particular situation, such as a car accident, the experienced driver has a better understanding of what may have occurred than a newbie driver who will have a surface level and likely inaccurate understanding of the what and why of a particular situation. The author and learning expert Josh Waitzkin describes this idea of finer distinctions and developing a more granular and systematic level of mastery in his book The Art of Learning. Josh grew up a chess prodigy and went on to become a chess champion. He then shifted his interests to various forms of martial arts, wherein he also went on to become world champion. Making smaller circles is how Josh describes cultivating finer distinction, which is a process of zooming further and further into something. The better you understand and experience something, the more your brain chunks your understanding together with other things. The psychological term for this is automaticity, and it's how you go from consciously doing something to mastering it on the unconscious level. As Josh describes, most people would be surprised to discover that if you compare the thought process of a grandmaster to that of an expert, a much weaker but quite competent chess player, you will often find that the grandmaster consciously looks at less, not more. That said, the chunks of information that have been put together in his mind allow him to see much more with much less conscious thought. So he is looking at very little and seeing quite a lot. Now think of me, Josh, competing against a less refined martial artist. Let's say I am in the process of instigating a throw that involves six technical steps. My opponent will experience an indecipherable flurry of action, while for me the six eternal steps of the throw are just the outer rim of a huge network of chunks. Our realities are very different. I am seeing much more than he is seeing experientially experientially because I am looking at less. There are within the same unit of time hundreds of frames in my mind, and maybe only a few of my opponent whose conscious mind is bogged down with much more data that has not yet been internalized as unconsciously accessible. I can now operate in all those frames that he doesn't even see. What does all of this have to do with 10x and clarifying your 20%? Put bluntly, as a person, you are now in the process of becoming someone specific. You are optimizing for something, whatever your standards are, even if that something isn't well defined or intentioned. You are making finer distinctions and developing expertise in whatever you are focusing on. In our world of distraction, many people are developing finer distinction and expertise in random things like celebrities lives, video games, etc. Whatever you focus on expands. Whatever you focus on, you develop finer distinctions in. Whatever you focus on, you create more of. Whatever you focus on, you become in an increasingly specific way to the exclusion of all else. The number one goal of life is developing mastery in your unique ability and thus living out your unique calling and purpose at the highest possible level. There is no end or ultimate arrival to the process. It's a continuing process of developing higher value and quality of freedom in all key areas and doing so in your own unique way. The more specific you get in what you want, the clearer will be the 20% rabbit hole you go down. Whatever you pay most attention to becomes your filter to the world. Your attention filters what you see and what you don't see. It also reflects who you will eventually become. Your continued focus develops extremely fine distinctions and expertise in whatever you commit yourself to. Thus, in defining your 10x, you want to be as specific as possible about how you define and measure success, i.e., your standards. Your standards will be your own. Your 10x transformation will be your own. Who you become will be incomparable and unique to anyone else. Your 10x transformation will become highly specific. It will also make you into someone more specific and more valuable and unique. What about you? What are you optimizing for? What do you ultimately want to be and do? What standards do you want to create and realize? What minimum standards, such as level of climb you work with or time it takes to run a marathon, will help you adapt and evolve to where you want to be. What is your fitness function, the capabilities and results you want to be able to produce and master? Thank you. That's it for the day.